morning. Well, what a pleasure for me to be here. First, to President Murray, thank you very much for allowing us to be here and for all the accommodations. And I thought it was especially nice for the President to say, any student who is here today, 5 extra points credit for being here today. Wasn't that nice? President Murray, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be back at Marist. I went to Archbishop Molloy High School, so I many connections with Marist over the years. I did not attend Marist. I attended Fordham. I couldn't get into Marist, so I went to Fordham, I want you to know. But it is truly a great school on so many levels, and what you've done for the community. And as the President said, you have that great polling institute that has been a special note to me for many, many years. Lee Meringoff. Where is Lee Meringoff? Give Lee Meringoff a round of applause. He has been polling the Cuomos for 30 years, Lee Meringoff. Now he can do all sorts of tables on father-son comparisons. Isn't that going to be interesting? But it's a pleasure to be with him. Rob Dyson, who's so important to the school and so important to the state. Rob, pleasure to be with you. Let's give him a round of applause. Cadet Matthew Grieve, thank you very much for leading us in the pledge. And to your elected officials, first to your Assemblyman Joel Miller. I forgot that Joel was a dentist. I just went through 2 terrible weeks of dental torture, which normally would have been really terrible. But it was the same 2 weeks that I was preparing the budget for the state of New York. So the root canal was actually a respite from the budget preparation. I kept saying, please, can I go back to the dentist again, please? But Joel is a great elected representative. As he mentioned, he is from a different political party than the one that I am enrolled in. But that is not what is of paramount importance, and it shouldn't be what's important. I represent the people of the state of New York. Joel represents the people of the state of New York, and that's what's important, and that's what your Assemblyman always remembers. It's a pleasure to be with him. Senator Stephen Saland, by the time the budget is over, I'm going to look like the senator. I want you to know. I can feel it already. It's going. It's going. When I started, I had a 4-head. I now have a 5-head. It's going to be a 6-head, and then I'm going to be the senator. The senator is really the class of the field when it comes to representing the people of the state, and I've done a lot of good work with him, and it's a pleasure to be with him. Senator Saland, pleasure to be with you. And thank you all for taking the time to come out. It is an important time in this state's history. It's an important point of inflection, if you will, in the history of this state. And the direction and the state, frankly, that we leave to you, because this is really not about me, it's not even about the elected representatives, this is what we're going to leave for you. And what state we leave behind. And that's what this discussion is all about. The governor gives something called the state of the state. I had to explain to my 13-year-old when I said, I want you to come to the state of the state. She said, why do you say state twice? I said, because it's called the state of the state address. She said, but why state twice? I said, well, because you use the word different ways. State meaning the condition of the state. She said, well, why don't they call it the condition of the state? I said, well, you have the state of the union, the president does, you have the state of the city, and then you have the state of the state. She said, yes, but the other ones don't have state twice, only state of the state. I had no answer for her, and I was stymied. But so next year, this will be called the condition of the state address. But the governor gives the state of the state address, and he's been male governors, does it at the beginning of the year, and it's to lay out the basic context of where the state is. Historically, the way the state of the state is done is the governor goes to Albany, goes to a legislative chamber in Albany, and gives the speech in Albany and expects people to come to Albany to hear the speech. That's nice, but life really doesn't work that way because people are living their lives and Albany is relatively far away. and people have jobs, and it's not really that it's your obligation to come to government. Really, it's government's obligation to come to you, right? So rather than just doing a State of the State address in Albany, what I'm going to do this year, which is something different, I want to bring my State of the State to you. So you understand the situation, you understand the context, and we'll bring it to you so you can have an informed opinion as we go forward. And that's what this is all about. The State of the State, as I mentioned, New York is at a crossroads. And that's probably the best way of configuring our current circumstance. And you look at the number of factors, and you can see the state going down one path. That is not a favorable path. You look at the national economic pressures. You look at the cost of government in the state of New York, which is among the highest in the nation. You look at the dysfunction of Albany over the past few years. They can't agree, it's gridlock, they can't get a budget done on time, scandal, corruption. And you look at the fact that the people really have lost faith in government. You look at those factors, and you could say that this state is going to a bad place. And it's following a road that's going to take us to a bad place. On the other hand, there are other factors. You look at the assets that this state has. You look at the legacy of this state. You look at the tenacity of this state over the years and the quality of our people. And you can really see how this can actually be a moment where we turn this crisis into an opportunity for the people of the state. So what is the state of the state? First and foremost, this is a time of crisis in the true meaning of the word. Second, it is a time when we must transform our government, and I use the word transform literally, to become the progressive capital of the nation once again, which is what this state was, and to actually seize the moment of opportunity to turn the trajectory of this state. Whatever happens, I will tell you this, that when we look back at this time in history and what happens in Albany, that we will be making a seminal decision that determines the course of this state for decades to come. If there's one thing that we're going to have to do in the state of New York, it is understand that it's a time for this state to actually make changes. In government, as in life, you can never solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. That is me as philosopher. Remember that, my young friends. Denial is not a life strategy. It doesn't work in government or politics either. You look at the job loss in the state of New York, we've lost about 800,000. We have about 800,000 unemployed New Yorkers right now. One of the worst business tax climates in the nation is the state of New York. Our taxes are 66% higher than the national average. You look at the rate of growth, especially in upstate New York, 1.7% per year, at a time when the U.S. average was 2.7%, not compared to downstate, compared to other places in the country. The cost of pensions in the country is exploding, but in New York, it's no different. 2013, it's projected to be up 476%. Our spending in the state far exceeds the rate of inflation. To put it simply, we spend too much money in the state of New York. Compared to inflation, 2.7%, our rate of increase in Medicaid, 5.4%, our increase in education, 6.2%. Our state spending has been outpacing the growth in income. So income is going up 3.8% a year. Our spending is going up close to 6% per year. And if you compare our state spending to the revenues that the state is taking in, right, because there's a very basic rule, you can't spend what you don't have. Well, we're trying to spend what we don't have. This year, we have what they call a $10 billion deficit, $10 billion gap between what we plan to spend and the revenues that we're taking in. The really bad news, next year it goes to $14 billion. And the really, really bad news, after that it goes to $17 billion. Why? We've been spending too much for years. and the rate of our increase in spending is unsustainable. And then the economy drops, and the revenues slow, and that's the gap that's predicted, and the gap goes on. And that is the essence of the problem and the challenge for the state. Now you could say, well, we spend a lot of money, but you know what? We really get a lot in return. And our friends in the legislature, when they were pumping up all that spending all those years, they were doing great things for the state. If only it was true. We have the highest education spending in the country. We're number 34 in terms of results. We have the highest spending in terms of Medicaid. We're number 21 of states in terms of results. We spend $1.6 billion annually on economic development programs. We're number 50 in terms of results. So we're spending a lot of money in government, and we're not even getting much for it. The other thing we're doing at the same time is we're growing government. Year after year, we're up to 600 executive agencies. Not just state government is growing, but the local governments are growing. Over 10,500 local governments in the state now. Just under 200 governments in Dutchess County alone, one government for every 1,500 people. When you say, why are those property taxes going up so high? This is why. Because of the number of local governments that we actually have to pay for. And all that government, well, maybe it's a great representative body for the people of the state. No, it's not. It is a body that, in my opinion, is dominated by special interests, and where the special interests win rather than the people. Well, proof is really in the pudding. You know how you know these are the facts? Because people are voting with their feet, and they are leaving. 2 million New Yorkers have left the state. We need radical reform. We need a new approach. We need a new perspective. And we need it now. And that's what these next few weeks are going to be about. We're going to have to start by transforming our government. What is the state of our government right now? Frankly, it's a government of dysfunction, gridlock, and corruption, and we have to flip that to be a government of performance, integrity, and pride. It's time for results and not rhetoric. Government is supposed to perform. Government is supposed to be a service bureau. It's not supposed to be a debating society. You can do that here. When you're in the legislature, when you're in the executive, argue, God bless, debate, but act and perform, and government is supposed to function at the end of the day. I'm about to do the budget, but it's not going to be about a budget, because it's not about a cutting or a trimming exercise. It's about reinventing, reorganizing, and redesigning the government itself. It's about a transformation plan to build a new New York. It is that fundamental. And if you're starting from the ground up, well, then you have to start with principles. And here are our principles. A government that pays for performance, just like you do in your life. The way society works is if you give someone $1, you expect something in return. For $1, not that much. If you give somebody $100, you expect something in return. When government is spending your money, the taxpayers' money, it's the same exercise. They should be getting results, and they should be getting performance. They should be getting results in real time. They should be results that work for the people of the state, and not the lobbyists of the state, and not the campaign donors of the state, and not the special interests of the state, but the people of the state. That's who the government is supposed to work for. And it is supposed to be a government that represents integrity. And when you say it's our New York State government, you say that with pride rather than with shame. That's the government that we want to give you. The first order of business is for that government to transform New York's economy. When you look at the state shield and you look at the heart of the state seal, what you see is the beautiful Hudson River. I was looking for Marist College on the banks there, but I didn't see it. But it could be there. You're looking at the Hudson, and you're looking at two ships, a smaller one and a larger one, to symbolize intracoastal and international commerce. The heart of the state seal is saying what made this state is commerce. What made this state the Empire State is the private sector, is business, is jobs. That's what's at the heart of the state, and that's what we have to get back to. We have to say to this nation that New York is open for business, we want jobs, we want growth. We're going to establish 10 regions of the state. Why? Because the state, we are one state in many ways. When it comes to growing the economy, you have to do it region by region. Why? Because every region is a little different. Every region has different assets. North Country is different than Western New York, is different than the Hudson Valley. So we're going to establish 10 regional councils that focus just on economic development growth. There'll be private sector partnerships. They will be spurred by higher education, because that is the engine that is pulling the train of economic development all across the country. These councils will also serve as a single point of contact. We'll have all the government on that one council, so that city will work with the county, will work with the state, all the state agencies, so it'll be one-stop shopping, and we'll have the private sector coming up with the best economic development plan for that region. Those councils will then coordinate all the existing economic development money and will compete for a state pot of up to $200 million for the most creative plans. Let them compete, because competition works and competition gets you performance. Second, we have to get down the property taxes in New York. We have some of the highest property taxes in the nation. 13 of the 16 highest tax counties in the country are in New York. And the property taxes are destroying our state. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said they just can't afford to live in their house anymore because they can't afford the property taxes. The old days, when I was starting out and you went to buy a house, the question was, can you afford the mortgage? Now the question is, can you afford the property taxes? We have to get those property taxes down, and we have to cap the growth. Dutchess County is 167% above the national average. My goal is to hold the line on taxes for now, but we're going to have to reduce them for the future. The very simple fact is that New York has no future as the tax capital of the nation, period. Our people can't afford to pay more taxes, and we're going to balance this budget without any new taxes. We need to transform state government. The last time state government was redesigned was a fellow named Al Smith when he was governor of the state of New York, 1927. In 1938, they passed a constitutional reform that said there will only be 20 state departments, because they wanted to limit the size of state government, right? What happens? The law says you can only have 20 departments. So what do? Because they want to really continue to grow government. Well, the law said 20 departments. The law didn't say anything about councils or advisory panels or working groups or facilities. So over the years, the legislature has created hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of government entities. So now you have the Department of Health, for example, one department, because you can only have one Department of Health, with 87 additional organizations clustered around the Department of Health by every other name. It is unmanageable. This should have been changed decades ago. It's expensive. It's inefficient. It's bizarre to try to manage on an organizational level. It's a joke is a technical word for it. It has to change, and it's going to change now. We want to do a comprehensive review. I want to bring in the best private sector minds in the state and form a commission where the private sector helps us reorganize. We call it SAGE, the Spending and Government Efficiency Commission. And let's bring some real operational challenges, improvements, metrics, and targets to the state government so we know when it's actually performing. We're going to have to transform the state budget. I'm proposing an emergency financial plan to stabilize the state's finances. It will have a wage freeze for all public employees. It will hold the line on taxes. I propose a state spending cap to impose fiscal discipline and to close the state's current $10 billion gap without borrowing and without new taxes. I want to transform the budget process itself, because right now the budget process is partisan political theater when it really should be about productive debate and compromise. I don't know how many of you have followed it over the years, but it's always embarrassing to watch. It's partisan, it's gridlock, it's ugly. State is supposed to have a budget passed by April 1. It's late. And it's a moment in time that is just reflective of the dysfunction. Right now, it's like ships passing in the night. Hold on, I think I recognize somebody on the ship. Bring the ships back for a second. Yes, I think if you look very closely on that ship, that is the Senate Majority Leader, Dean Skelos, on that ship. And on that other ship, that is the Assembly Speaker, Sheldon Silver. And yes, that is yours truly. You will notice that I have the largest battleship. And then, in a real budget battle, the special interest groups come in with an air attack and shoot at yours truly. We have to laugh because otherwise we cry. This year it's got to be done a different way. There are 3 flashpoints in the budget. It's education, it's Medicaid, and it's state and local mandates. I want to try a different approach. For Medicaid, for example, we're going to follow a model they used in the state of Wisconsin. In the state of Wisconsin, the governor proposed a budget cut. And the industry said, well, we can't live with that. And the governor said to the industry, well, you come in, we'll sit around the table, we'll go into a room, we'll lock the door, and we'll figure out how to make it work. But the budget cut is a reality, and I'm not going backwards on that, but I'll work with the industry to find out how to make it better and how to redesign the process. That worked in Wisconsin. We're going to try the same page in the state of New York. It's not about cutting a budget. It's about redesigning these programs that haven't worked for years anyway. We're going to use a crisis management approach and have a redesigned team that's assembled. Medicaid, which is one of the biggest flashpoints, will have the best experts from across the state, the stakeholders in the process. We are actually hiring the fellow from Wisconsin who did it in Wisconsin. He's here now, Jason Helgerson. We promised him no Wisconsin jokes for 60 days. And we are now working to redesign the Medicaid process. We're going to do the same thing with mandate relief, which is the state imposition of rules and regulations on counties and towns and cities with what they call unfunded mandates, where the state tells the local government what to do but doesn't give them the money to do that. And the same process. We're bringing people in. We're going to redesign the relationship from the bottom up, and we're going to make that part of the budget process. Education, which is probably the most important, frankly, of these areas in terms of redesign, we have to do something about the fact that more money does not mean better services, better services, better services. Government's answer, and when you talk to the politicians in Albany, some of them, well, we have to put more money in education. Why? Well, we have to owe it to the kids. Really? Are we better educating the kids with more money? Do we have any correlation whatsoever between dollars and performance? No. As a matter of fact, we don't even look at it that way. Just give the groups more money. No. I want more performance. I want more performance. I want more for the kids. Right now, the way we fund education is basically by what they call a formula grant. Every school district in the state gets a formula amount of money. And you get that same amount of money, whether you do a great job or you do a terrible job, you get the same amount of money. There is no incentive and there is no sanction. Everybody does fantastic, you get the same amount of money. Everybody is lazy, you get the same amount of money. competition works, fund performance, fund performance, fund performance. The federal government is much more innovative in this regard. I worked in the federal government 15 years ago, and we moved away from formula grants, away from block grants, and we paid for competition and we paid for performance. Only the state of New York still does it by formula grants. I propose two funds, performance funds, where school districts will get their formula in part, and then we will reward the best school districts in the state. So other school districts will emulate their performance. A $250 million bonus fund for the schools that improve their performance the most. Another $250 million fund for the management of the school district that finds the most efficiencies and best administrative services. Find the best school districts, find out what they're doing, reward them for their performance, praise them, applaud them, have the other school districts emulate them, find the best managers, who's saving money, who's doing the best job, reward them, applaud them, raise them up, give them a trophy, say to the other managers, we want you to do this. You fund performance, incentivize performance, let's educate kids, and not just grow the budget year after year after year. We need to consolidate the number of local governments. We're shrinking in population. We're adding more and more governments. It can't be. I want to have a consolidation bonus pool where we actually consolidate those governments that come together and merge or share services so there's an incentive. We have to transform the ethical environment in Albany, and we have to clean up Albany. You've all seen the headlines, year after year after year. I spent 4 years as Attorney General. I did many of these cases on public integrity corruption. And you know, we like to say, well, issues are complicated, and there's a lot of gray. That's often true. Sometimes it's not true, and sometimes it's black and white. And when it comes to this issue, my friends, it is black and white. The people of this state have lost trust in their government. They have lost trust, and the word is trust. Their government has lost credibility, and the word is credibility. And they have to pass ethics reform and clean up this government, and they have to pass it now. My Clean Up Albany plan ends what they call pay-to-play, where certain companies get better access for political contributions. There's full disclosure of outside income by legislators, an independent monitor, independent redistricting, so the politicians don't draw their own lines for their districts, and public financing of campaigns. What is the goal? The goal is to make this state the progressive capital of the nation once again. We have a lot of fiscal work to do, a lot of economic work, but we also have to achieve social progress. I spent 4 years fighting Wall Street corruption. And everybody said, well, where was Washington? Where was the SEC? Where were all the federal regulators when the consumers were being abused and when the mortgages were being defrauded? I asked the question, well, where was Albany during that Wall Street corruption period? Where was the Department of Banking? Where was the Department of Insurance? And the truth is, right now, our current regulatory scheme does not work that well, because a lot of these new financial products are falling through the cracks among the agencies. I have a proposal that I want the legislature to pass this year that merges insurance, banking, and consumer protection, saves the taxpayer money by merging 3 organizations into one, and it will actually better regulate the industry and better protect the consumer by working the way Wall Street works today and form a Department of Financial Regulation. We have to create jobs. We have to create green jobs. I want a $100 million fund that incentivizes the best job development plans in the state. Let private business work with local communities, and let's pick the best programs that create green jobs, reduce pollution, and further environmental justice, and fund the creation of jobs by the private sector. I believe in fostering minority and women-owned business enterprises. It's been a success story in the state. The current goal is 10% of all the work in the state going to minority and women-owned businesses. I want to double that goal to 20% to make a real difference in minority and women-owned business enterprise. Many of you in this room don't remember this, and it's a good thing. There was a facility called Willowbrook many, many years ago, which was a state mental hospital that a reporter went into with a camera, a TV journalist, and showed deplorable conditions that shocked the people of the state and started a whole movement called deinstitutionalization, where we took people out of these large facilities and put them in community group residences. There are shadows and shades of that kind of social injustice in what we're doing today. You have a juvenile justice system in the state of New York where if a young person gets into trouble, they are sent to a state juvenile justice system. These juvenile justice facilities are usually located way upstate. They are incredibly expensive for the taxpayer, about $250,000 per year to keep a child in one of these facilities. They have been proven not to help with any degree of success the child. 90% recidivism rate. 90% recidivism rate. If anything, the proof is the juvenile gets worse, not better, for the experience of going to the facility. Well, why do we do it then? Why do we take juveniles out of their communities, most often from downstate, send them to a facility upstate, charge the taxpayer $250,000, and actually give the juvenile a bad experience? Because we need the jobs in upstate New York. And it's hard to find jobs in upstate New York. I understand that. And that is very true. And that is a problem. But there is no justification for this state, in the name of providing jobs for one population, to imprison another population and to charge the taxpayers $250,000. I believe if we believe in equality, let's act in the name of equality, and let's pass marriage equality for all New Yorkers. I want to help two populations at once. We have a real need for healthy food, green food in inner city communities, and we need markets for our agricultural community. I want the state to foster a program of urban green markets where the state will set up essentially farmer markets for the New York agricultural community in inner city communities all across the state. Last but not least, we have an opportunity to seize, we have a moment to seize the opportunity. This is a difficult situation that we are in. But New York is not alone in this situation. There are actually 8 states with financial conditions that are worse than the state of New York. And this is going to be a time of national transition when we look back. It's an economic recalibration. Just like the calibration transition from the agricultural industry to the industrial to the high-tech transition, we are in the midst of one right now. And New York has always led the way through these transitions. And I truly believe that New York can do it again. And I believe that this is a moment for this government to rise up, get its act together, perform, and actually make this state the Empire State again. But government will change. Government will change when you require government to change. I used to say in my campaign is not about me, it is about we. This is not about, let's elect a new governor, and the new governor goes to Albany, and the new governor is going to change everything. That's not how this works. I am one person. I am going to do my part. I'm going to work 7 days a week. I'm going to try very hard. But I can't do it. I can't do it alone. You know when government changes? When you make it change. You know when people complain about Albany, it's terrible, they're terrible, everything's terrible. You know what I say? I say, you know who to blame? Look at the mirror if you want to find the person to blame. You know why Albany is Albany? Because the people haven't demanded that Albany change. You know when the politicians change? When the people demand that the politicians change. And as long as you ignore Albany, or you turn a deaf ear, or you just believe it's never going to change, that that's the way it is, it won't change. It will change when you make it change. And I know politicians. I'm a politician. I grew up with politicians. My mother's a fair politician. Politicians listen very well. They do. They listen very well. Politicians who don't listen well aren't politicians for long. It's a form of natural selection. It's Darwin. They will listen to the people. But you have to act. And you have to speak. You know what the most striking things to me about Albany? Past few weeks that I've been up there? There were no people. There were no people. You walk around the Capitol, you see no people. I opened the governor's office on the second floor in the Capitol, and previously it was sealed. You couldn't get onto the second floor. In the name of security, there are these big glass doors, bulletproof glass, nobody could come in. So I get inaugurated. I said I want to do something. I want to open up the doors and open it up to the public. And now the second floor is open in the Capitol. And you can come up and you walk up the stairs and you can come in and you're in the hallway right in front of my office. Right in front of my office. Right in front of my office, they call it the Hall of Governors. It's a very long hallway and portraits of all the governors all along the hallway. Not all the governors. A couple of the governors are shy. They didn't want to have their picture painted. One of them is my father. So most of the governors are along the Hall of Governors. And now the Hall of Governors is open to the public. And you can come. And they said, oh, this is going to be a bad. They all advised me against it. There's security problems. Going to be all these members of the public all over the hallway. You know what? Nobody's there. You could bowl in the Hall of Governors. You would hurt no one. The Capitol is the executive, the legislature. The lobbyists are always there. Lobbyists, if I go out and I'm walking around the Hall of Governors looking for my father's portrait, I always run into a lobbyist. No people. No people. Albany changes when you make it change. Albany changes when you make your voice heard. Albany changes when you generate the energy to make it change. All the beautiful periods of growth in this state, when the government led the way, the people were always the wind beneath the wings. Change comes from you. I will do my part. But a strong governor gets the strength from a galvanized population behind him or her. If you are behind me, and you are behind me actively, and you are speaking up, and you are showing up, and you are sending emails, and you are sending letters, and you're dialing and calling your representative, and they know you want change, we will get change. And if we get this government to act and reform and do what it needs to do and understand the reality and stop playing politics and stop playing I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican and we're going to get on opposite sides of the room because our party politics is more important than the public interest. If we stop this gridlock in Albany and we unleash the ability of the people of this state, you're going to see this state reach a level you've never seen it reach before. We just need a government that is as good as the people of this state. And that's what this state of the state is about. And I need you to rise up this year and show an interest that you haven't shown in years. And say, I want my government back. And I want to be proud of my government. And I want my children to stay here. And I want to stay here. And I want the economy growing in New York once again. If you speak up, we are going to do it. Together, we're going to make this the Empire State like it's never been before. Thank you, and God bless you.